recently spent the last 3 years out in California for college, and I just moved back home to Virginia, and can I just say, I missed the queso dip. Seriously, California, where is the queso? There is simply none out there. That lesson 3 years ago was shocking, deeply disturbing, and actually a bit traumatizing. Whenever I ask my California friends what they know about queso, they're always like, oh yeah, I know what queso is. They serve that at Chipotle. Are you joking? Are you kidding me? That's Chipotle queso is not actual queso. That shit's gross. That's so bad. Please don't insult me with that. Thank you. Now, note this. Tostitos is not queso. Nacho cheese, that's not queso. Queso fundido isn't queso. Okay, I'm talking about straight up Tex-Mex, queso dip, cheese dip, chili con queso, queso blanco. That's what I'm talking about, okay? Or this queso you can buy at the grocery store. Since coming home, I've been able to have access to this absolute crack for a while now again, and it's got me wondering, where does this queso divide begin? Today, I'm gonna show you all what I've learned about queso. We're gonna deep dive into where this divide begins, and we're gonna show you the facts on this queso conspiracy. And let me tell you this, queso warriors, this is a fight for our nation, for our values. There are queso haters out there that I did not know existed before this moment, but we're gonna show them what's up. We're gonna mark down the divide. This is about geography. So the first thing I did to pin down where this queso divide occurs is first my lived experiences. That is, we know that queso is easily accessible in Virginia, which is where I am now. We also know that it's not at all accessible in California, which is where I was for 3 years. Tragically, might I add. To convey this, we're gonna mark Virginia green and California red, respectively. Now, to figure out where this divide occurs, we're gonna have to branch out between these two locales. My first thought about this was, okay, let's find out where queso was invented. As it turns out, this is no easy question to answer. There are many stories of how queso was invented, and it's hard to nail down exactly where. There are two main contenders. They're both trying to claim victory, I guess as a PR win, I don't know. The first one we're gonna look at is Arkansas. The story goes that a restaurant operator named Blackie Donnelly opened a Mexican restaurant in Arkansas in 1935 in Little Rock. They say that it was at his restaurant that he invented the cheese dip recipe. Now note, I'm distinguishing between cheese dip and queso here. Arkansas tends to claim credit only for the cheese dip recipe, which as we talked about earlier is basically interchangeable with queso, but the other state is the one that claims queso as their invention. I wish I had more to say about this Arkansas story, but there is not much more to the story. So we're gonna move on to a more compelling state, Texas. Queso is classically Tex-Mex. There are quite a few stories claiming that queso was invented in Texas. Unfortunately, the dates just aren't dating. It doesn't make sense. So as I color in Texas, I'm just gonna tell you about these 3 stories, and you can believe what you choose to believe. As one story goes, in 1911, a Mexican restaurateur leaves Mexico during the Revolution to move to Dallas, Texas. In 1916, he opens a restaurant called Miguel's Cafe, which is later renamed to El Phoenix. By 1918, he was serving early Tex-Mex food, so American-style dishes with some Mexican flair. And at some point in its early history, it developed queso as a recipe to go on top of tacos, and the customers loved it so much that they used it as the dip, which we now consume today. Wouldn't that be a nice story? Except we don't have a date. When did this transition happen? From queso on top of tacos to queso as a dip that we consume with chips. And on top of that, the website for El Phoenix claims that they are the original creators of Tex-Mex. But we can nail this down to a Chicago businessman who we're going to talk about in the year 1900. So how can we be sure that this story that they're telling us about queso is true? I don't know. I don't think we can. I don't think we can trust this story about queso. But that's up to you. Let's move on to story number 2 about queso in Texas. Another queso story. Now, this story is from an Austin-based news website, so note the bias here. But they claim that early recipes of queso started appearing in the late 1800s. I'm talking 1896, okay? But the first recipe that was nailed down in Texas was a San Antonio Women's Club recipe that had one for chili con queso in the year 1920. Now, okay, this would put Texas as having queso before Arkansas, but I couldn't find the recipe. I couldn't nail it down. I couldn't find it. So we're going off of a San Antonio website claiming that San Antonio invented queso. Like, of course they're gonna say that, right? So How can I trust it? I can't trust it. Story number 3. Now, this story is about that Chicago businessman who opened the first Tex-Mex restaurant in the year 1900. His name was Otis Farnsworth, and he opened the original Mexican restaurant. That's what it was called, original Mexican restaurant, in the year 1900 in San Antonio. He creates the model for the Tex-Mex dishes we love today. By the year 1922, it's claimed that queso is a popular menu item for the original Mexican restaurant. I even was able to find a menu from the 1930s which showed that they had chili con queso, except that's from the 30s and it's not from the 20s. So is this earlier than Arkansas? Who knows? Arkansas was 1935. Further, Otis claims he never changed the menu. So the menu opened in 1900 is the same menu as it is in 1935? But how can we be sure? There's no proof of that. It's impossible to know which two of these states made queso. There's stories coming from both, and they all seem equally probable. But this takes us to the end of our origin stories. Queso dip, or at least the kind of queso dip we're talking about in this video, is distinctly American. But queso as a concept was invented probably in Mexico in the 1800s at the latest. That likely didn't look like what we consume today, but the origins of queso were definitely distinctly Mexican. And as a side note, even the early versions of queso that we're talking about in Texas and Arkansas probably don't look like what we enjoy today. After all this research, I only nailed down 2 more states, both queso states, thank God. But we have 46 more to go? So I called everyone I knew, every out-of-state person I knew, to ask them about their experience on whether their state has queso. Hey, quick question for you. Do you guys have queso dip in West Virginia?
Queso?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, it's for a YouTube video. You have a friend, Olga, right? Out in Idaho? Yes, can you ask her for me?
Okay, so she just texted me back, and she just said that it's not easily accessible.
Okay,
No.
that works. Hey, quick question for you and Dad. When you all go to Delaware, is it easy to find queso dip?
What? Yeah, it's pretty easy.
Okay, thank you. That was it. Bye.
So,
Hi, I had a quick question for you. So, I know you spent some time in Seattle and Tucson and Philly. Is it by chance easy to find queso dip at a Mexican restaurant in those places?
I'd say it was pretty easy in Tucson and Philly,
Okay.
but I remember it being kind of difficult in Seattle.
Hello. If you're enjoying this video, please leave a like, comment, and subscribe because this took so long. Anyways, that was it. I just want to pop in. Enjoy the rest of the video. Okay, so I don't know that many people who are out of state, or at least not out of California. So for step 3 to fill in this map, I was up to secondary sources. Here I decided to search the hell out of Reddit. I dived into city subreddits and cooking subreddits and Yelp forums and even a Texas forum. And the posts were usually something along the lines of, hey, I'm a Southerner from X place who's moved to Y place and they don't have queso here. What's up with that? Where can I find queso? So from that, I could at least find the poster's place of origin and their place of current residence. And from there, some of the comments were like, oh, I'm from X place and also living here. So I could generally find some other places too that people had commented from. Now, when a transplant is saying that a place does not have good queso and how much they miss their home queso dearly, I am trusting that transplant, okay? Because these Californians, they're like, oh yeah, queso from Chipotle. No. Stop. So when doing that, I'm putting a lot of faith in these transplants to be real with me about whether or not there's good queso in these areas. So I just want to let you know that I'm choosing to trust my fellow transplants. Now, this is also where we're going to introduce a third type of state, the toss-up, which is where queso is definitely harder to come by than it should be, but you could probably find it with some ease. If you're from any of these states and I've gotten it wrong somehow, please let me know, because I would love to vindicate your shitty little red state, but I can't until I know that you all have queso. So now by this point, I had run out of Reddit threads. There were no more strong opinions on queso for any of these other states. This could mean one of either two things. The states already had queso, so therefore they wouldn't need to post about it on Reddit. Or 2, the states are so deprived of happiness that they don't even know queso exists and therefore wouldn't know to ask about it on Reddit. But I wasn't going to stop here. It was my job to figure this out, and I was going to finish the job. For all the remaining states, I looked up on Google Maps Mexican restaurants in those states, and I selected the top restaurants for each state. I selected between 3 and 10 of those restaurants, depending on how skewed the results were in favor or against queso. I looked at every menu for those restaurants, and if it was easy to find, we're marking it green. If it was impossible to find, we're marking it red. And if it was kind of half and half, we're going to mark it again yellow. And here it is, the finished, glorious queso map. This genuinely took hours of research. It's perhaps the most important thing I've ever done. From this map, we can see the queso stronghold in the south, some exploratory states out west, and some exploratory states in the northeast as well. But out west, there is a big anti-queso block, and the rhetoric online too is palpable. It's horrible. It's anti-queso. They think that we don't like authentic Mexican food. That's not true. We just like queso. When I look at this map, I'm tragically sad because so much of America seems to be covered in queso, which is great. But 2 of some of the most populous states, California and New York, have never experienced what I get to experience every day. The idea that so many people are missing out on something so incredible and so uniting is it's really hard to see. Look, I am proud to be from a queso state. I don't know who I'd be without queso, quite frankly. I grew up on this stuff. I love it. Fun fact, I used to go to the same Mexican restaurant every year on my birthday for my birthday dinner because I love their queso. Look, if I ever have to move to another non-queso state again, it's going to be tough. I hope you in the Northeast and out west in Illinois can get your act together. I hope you'll reconsider your position in this fight for morality and for the future of this nation. I think we all just need a little bit of queso. All right, everyone. With that, goodbye. This is it. This is our queso map. Goodbye.